On February 12, 1908, an event began that would challenge the spirits of 17 men, the endurance of 6 automobiles, and bring together 4 countries like never before or since. Across America, over Japan, through Siberia, Mongolia, Mother Russia, Germany, and onto the finish line at Paris. This race pitted man and machine against the 2 fiercest challengers of all, nature and themselves. Germany, Italy, France, and America all had entries in the race, but only 1 car and 3 men would capture the winning trophy. In 100 years, this remarkable feat has never been repeated, making it the greatest auto race on Earth.
Here were this group of men that had no idea about the world, that just went, well, yeah, we can go from New York to Paris, no problem. They really had no idea. And then these machines that were so new to the world at the time. Man, machine, geography, distance, time, it all comes together in this one terrific story.
Work is underway to build 4 of the 6 cars. The German Protos, the Italian Zust, the French de Dion-Bouton, and the American Thomas Flyer, the winner of a grueling 22,000-mile race.
We're quite excited about doing this. Some of the challenges are the fact that the car was built just about 100 years ago. So to use our modern equipment and supplies and try and make them look 100 years old is a bit of a challenge.
In terms of where we're at with the film now, we are scouting locations to do the actual filming, casting for actors to do the reenactments, and what's really exciting is that we're actually rebuilding some of the cars that took part in the race.
Do it in the middle of winter, urged the race organizers. The Bering Strait will be frozen. 1908 was a time of innocence and wide-eyed belief that anything was possible. After the race, American President Teddy Roosevelt said, "I like people who do something, not the good man who stays at home." The greatest auto race on Earth captures that enthusiasm and reminds the world to dream big.
Living Longer, Living Better is your television magazine highlighting lifestyles, hobbies, sports, health, travel, people, and places in our community, and much more. Information, ideas, and knowledge that will encourage new thinking and provide insights into our community. Plus, sharing fun activities of all types, understanding options for financial well-being, and making life more enjoyable. Join us on the journey exploring the many facets of living longer, living better.
Welcome to Living Longer, Living Better. Today's show is very, very interesting. We're going to talk a little bit about, well, actually quite a bit about history, some very important history in the automobile, for the automobile. And then we're going to take you on a new journey that's going to be a recreation in another historical moment. So I'd like to introduce a gentleman to you who's very much involved in this. This is Mr. Luke Rizzuto, and Luke has been involved in the Great Race Around the World, the 1908 Great Race Around the World for some time. We're going to pry into a lot of the details about that race. So Luke, tell me a little bit though about you and your history and kind of what brought you up to this. I know you're very much into the automotive world, so give us a little background on you and how you got into this passion for the 1908 Great Race.
Well, I was born on a ranch in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and we were fruit ranchers. And when I was about 9 years old, my dad gave me the keys to an old Model A Ford orchard truck and said it was your responsibility to keep it running. So while my friends were playing with Tonkas, I was doing donuts in the orchard with a Model A orchard truck. So that got me started on the cars. And then I pretty much have a knack for mechanics and detail work and stuff, so I automatically just kind of went into cars and contracting and stuff like that. But in 2007, my car. I have a 1918 Chevrolet V8 touring car, and it's the Henry Ford Museum car. It only has about 8,000 original miles on it.
I've seen it. It's a pretty spiffy car, I must say.
I'm very lucky to have it. And that car was invited on the Great Race anniversary of 2008 because it was the first overhead valve production V8. And what happened is the Great Race went bankrupt in 2008. So I had so much time in getting sponsored and never did get sponsored. I set up the race myself. So I put out a mass email and said, I'm leaving Times Square October 18th, and we're celebrating the 100th anniversary of the Great Race in the 18 V8.
We're going to talk some more about that. So
Yeah.
let's jump into the original race itself, because in essence, you've become a great historian for that. And the context of the race, as you've taken it on, really is very exacting. So let's take a look at the cars that went out in the race first. So tell us about the cars that went out in the race. And it started in May, or this one started in February.
This is
February 1908.
They left midwinter, February 12th, in 1908. The Thomas Flyer, of course, a 1907 Thomas Flyer, is up at the National Auto Museum. And that was the winner of the Great Race, and George Schuster drove that car. He was the head mechanic for the Flyer Corporation.
Now, don't give away the winner too early. Let's go through the race. Oh,
Okay.
you did. All right, go for it.
And then the French teams had 3 cars in the race, none of which finished. The Italians had one called the Zust, and I'll tell you about that later. And then the Provost was the German car. The German car is in the a museum in Munich. The Zust was lost for years, and a couple of brothers up in Vancouver bought a wreck up in northern Canada. The engine was powering a sawmill, and the body was in the bushes. And later on, discovered that it was the Zust. They found the Zust.
Back. Well, let's talk. I want to kind of get through this more quickly because I want to talk about some of the other things. So we had all these cars that started in the race, and it's going to cross from New York to Paris.
Yes.
And that map is kind of a nice old map from the New York Times. It shows beautiful the race, where it was going to go, and the different legs of the race. They ran into some problems, though, that they couldn't cross over at Alaska into Siberia. They thought it would be frozen, but that didn't work, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Actually, the original race was going to go over the frozen Bering Strait, but as people know, the lakes freeze smooth and oceans freeze in boulders.
Yeah.
And they couldn't get across. They were going to take their car apart. The car weighed 6,000 pounds. They were going to take it apart and hire 10 dog sleds to dog sled them across, but that was an extra 10 grand.
No,
and the newspapers wouldn't go for that, New York Times and French newspaper, so they ended up going back down to Seattle and then having it freighted to Japan.
Okay, and what are some of the obstacles that they faced? Just a real quick list of the things.
Number one was cold weather, midwinter in the northern hemisphere. They were sub-zero weather, 20-foot snow drifts, no gas. Gas was at hardware stores where farmers bought it for their tractors. They had to have gas set out in Siberia. They had to drain the water every night in their cars, build a fire under them every morning to heat up the oil to get them started, fill them with water again, no antifreeze.
Okay, all right, so they had a lot of things in 1908.
No roads, less than 1,000 miles of paved roads, so there was no roads, transcontinental.
Right.
They were all...
So they really struggled through a lot, and there were only a few that really finished the whole race. But the reality of it is once they did finish, you told us about the winner. It was United States, and it was the Thomas Flyer.
Well, it's important to know, too, that the U.S. wasn't involved in this at first. It was just Germany, France, and Italy. It was Theodore Roosevelt that called up his good friend E.R. Thomas of the Thomas Flyer Corporation and said, this is a world event, and I want to be in this. So this is a must. So that's when E.R. Thomas called his head mechanic, George Schuster, and said, hey,
we're going.
We're going. So you got to be in New York tomorrow morning.
So if you want to learn more about the real great race, there's going to be some websites at the end. Please go see those. And Luke lectures very frequently, and on those websites you'll see where, and blogs, you'll see where he's lecturing. He gives an hour-long presentation that's really stunning about the real details of that race. But in a few moments we're going to...
it's free.
And it was free at the time. And that in a few moments we're going to talk about their effort to recreate in 2008 the race. We'll be back in just a second. Bobby Decker is a realtor that cares about community. Few things say more about Bobby's commitment than her support of many of our local charities.
One of my favorite things to do is to give back to nonprofits that are in our communities. Peninsula Humane Society, which takes care of our furry little friends, making sure none of them are abandoned. To Career Closet, which makes sure that the women who go there are outfitted with clothes so that they can get jobs. To College Track, which ensures that the students are not forgotten halfway through their college career. They have enough money to actually finish. And then there's Build, which helps miniature entrepreneurs become big entrepreneurs. All of it's giving back to nonprofits that make a difference, and that makes me feel good.
Well, welcome back to Living Longer, Living Better. We're talking about the 1908 Great Race, but from now on, we're going to talk about recreations of the 1908 Great Race. So we're joined by John Quam, who is a critical part of understanding the exact and perfect route to do what they did in 1908. So by introduction, John, I understand as part of this dynamic duo that you've been the guy that's done a lot of the research to make sure you understood what the exact route was, particularly when we talk about crossing Asia a little bit later on. But some of those cities and a lot of the cities in America that were there then are not there now. So tell us a little bit about how you got so involved, so excited about the history of this, and then how did you hook up with Luke to do this great adventure?
Well, hooking up with Luke was interesting because I was reading through a magazine called Old Cars Weekly, and I saw a classified ad in there that stated, I'm reenacting the U.S. leg of the 1908 Great Race. If you're interested in attending, it's free. You pay for your own gas, food, and lodging. I'm leaving Times Square in New York on a Saturday at 10 o'clock in the morning. We'll meet the night before in a hotel in New Jersey. So that's how I met Luke.
So you're in.
Yeah, I mean.
All right, so you are an avid historian. Tell us a little bit about your history with cars.
Well, I started, probably the first car I got involved in was a 1903 Holzman. My father was a big collector, and I was probably about 10 or 12 at the time. So that started my interest, and then we just plowed through a number of cars, and from a family standpoint, we have probably a little over 70-some cars right now.
Oh boy. All right, so both you guys are really into the detail and understanding the cars, and that's going to be important as we talk about the recreation of the race. So you renamed it for this particular leg of the first leg of the race was the longest auto race centennial, and you really took off on the day, maybe not quite the same month, but on the day that they took off in 1908 and traversed across the country. Let's hear a little bit about what we did, what kind of car you took real quickly, and then maybe some of the fun that occurred along the way, because I think we've got some slides about all the people that came out to greet you. But you took your
1918 Chevy V8.
Okay, and you took?
A 1930 Chrysler Series 70 Roadster.
Okay, and they both made it all the way across the United States?
More or less. We had problems.
You can't drive an old car without a problem. It isn't a matter of will you break down, it's when you break down.
There's a lot of spilled oil in hotel parking lots, let's put it that way.
Okay, so the race ran across the United States, and I think we've got a little map that points out kind of the direction of this. Real quick, this was the exact replication of that original race, Okay?
Yes.
But
we took that exact route.
Right. So some of those places that were towns when they were towns then weren't towns anymore. You had to go through ghost towns and other things.
And we saw the ghost town sites, railroad sidings, 500 miles of dirt roads we took.
Okay, what great fun.
Where he got stuck in the mud in Tonopah. It was probably 98% was probably inaccurate.
Right, plus we had an historian,
couple of them
actually, that were involved in this. One of them actually had done a documentary prior to this on the actual Great Race as well. So, as Luke said, we're in the middle of ranches, we're on dirt roads. We, a couple times, had no idea where we were, no cell phone coverage. And we didn't use GPS.
But some of the interesting things, and I think we also have a picture of that, you hit a few towns where people actually dressed in costumes of the era, and the school kids came out, all different kinds of things. That had to be a lot of fun. Tell us about maybe one of the best celebrations that you...
Goldfield is right there. It's lower right there, and that used to be a bustling town of about 20,000. It's about 350 now. And the whole town showed up in the morning for us in period dress and served as breakfast. It was a lot of fun.
Great. And so you made it across the country.
Yeah.
And you guys weren't the only guys. Just give me a quick snapshot of what other cars went with you, because it was a wide open call for anybody that wanted to come, correct?
Well, we had 30 Chevrolet Speedster that was hand built by one of the historians, Ray Fowler in Canada. 40 Cadillac 75 sedan. 67 Volkswagen Beetle. We had about 100 cars come and go.
Yeah, I was going to say, there are a lot of cars that came. Some of them spent...
They couldn't go for the full 3 weeks.
A couple hours. Some of them spent a day. Some spent a couple weeks. So you never knew who was going to show up and drop out. But we had roughly 8 cars that made the full journey from New York to San Francisco.
And 16 people, yeah.
Okay.
We had a couple flying from Germany to join us. They rented a new Buick.
Oh, wow.
And we had a guy flying from Ireland.
Oh, how wonderful.
And I made it, as you saw the title there, The Longest Auto Race. I named it after George Schuster's book that he published in 1961. And I also call it The Longest Auto Race because when I called it The Great Race, I was getting called by debtors, so I didn't want to do that.
Change that name.
And,
so the scenario was that they made that replica Traverse of the United States and had a lot of fun with it, and they're going to do some more. We're going to tell you about that in the next segment, so stay tuned. Come on back. We're going to tell you about the next leg of the Great Race in 2014.
Bobby Decker is an award-winning veteran of the real estate industry. She has assisted hundreds of clients in Northern California to buy and sell properties successfully, as well as educating the public via her television, web, and/or newspaper articles.
As a former high school teacher of biology, my students' success was my #1 priority. Now, as a real estate broker, educating and informing my clients and readers and viewers is my new priority.
Welcome back again to Living Longer, Living Better. We're going to show you some videos that are going to help to give you a little insight on what Luke and John are taking on this next exciting leg. Here's the part where we talk about really replicating history and creating new history at the same time. So take a look at these videos.
Yeah, the race I'm taking this on is a reenactment of the 1908 Great Race from New York to Paris, but we've done the New York to San Francisco leg in 2008 for the 100th anniversary, and we're going to finish up the race next year in 2014 and drive across southern Japan, ferry across to Vladivostok, Russia, and go through Siberia. We'll be in China about 5 days and end up in Paris. And then after that, to get our cars home, we're going to drive up the coast of Paris, up to Oslo, Norway, and ferry our cars across to Iceland, drive around Iceland, ferry our cars across back to Germany, and then ship them to New York. And then we're going to pick up our cars in New York and take the Yellowstone Trail home. And the Yellowstone Trail is a little-known highway that was built about the same time the Lincoln Highway was built, but Lincoln Highway got all the press. So the Yellowstone Trail goes between Plymouth, Massachusetts, and Seattle, Washington, and we'll be taking that home. So we'll be driving about 19,000 miles in about 110 days or so. And you can join us if you like. I've tried to make this affordable. We have Muir Corporation up in Seattle that we hired to plan the route through Siberia. They specialize in Russia and China. And the cost, if you have a car, is $28,000, and that's room and board and meals and visas. You're responsible for your own shipping and repairs and gas. And if you're just a rider and you don't have a car, you can ride with us for $18,000. All the money goes to Muir. I'm not making any money off this whatsoever. I'm actually doing it for the adventure of it. So please join us.
Well, as a young kid, my father was a big collector of antique cars, so I've grown up around this all my life. So it's not so much the racing part of it as it is the antique car part of it, and just I love old cars. And this actually, though in 1908 was a race, this is going to be a tour. All right, the reason I'm taking this tour is I'm a bit of a history buff, and automotive history in particular, and the 1908 Great Race was probably the most significant automobile event ever accomplished in a lot of different ways. Not only the race, but it also proved to the American and the world public as well that an automobile was more than just a toy. It was something that would provide dependable transportation, and from the point that the race ended on forward, the horse became obsolete and the car took over.
Well, you saw in the videos, they're stressing this is a tour, this is not a race, and that it's open to everybody that wants to come along if they're willing to put up the resources that are necessary to join the trip. But it's quite an extraordinary adventure. And as we mentioned earlier, John researched the essence of every city that was there that may have changed its name, and there was a whole dozen or so. But let's talk to the map. Let's start in Japan, if we can. We'll get the map up a little bit. And so the shipment from the States or wherever the cars are coming from around the world to Japan is on the owners of the cars. But when they get to Japan, here's what the race looks like, or the tour looks like when we hit Japan. Give us a quick overview, if you could, Luke, on the cities and the stops along the way.
Well, we land in Yokohama.
Yes.
And the line there is the route we're taking. And then we ship out of Kobe to, that's the ferry to Vladivostok, Russia, correct?
Yes.
And that'll be about 4 or 5 days crossing southern Japan and all the mountains and stuff like that.
Okay, let's jump into Russia to get the Vladivostok. Say that real fast.
Vladivostok.
Vladivostok.
Say that 6 times in a row.
Okay, so now we're over in Russia and we're running off to Paris. Give us a little quick snapshot of the path.
Well, Vladivostok is on the Sea of Japan, and that's where we'll start. And probably it's about 200 miles up through Russia there. Then we take off across the northeastern section of China through Harbin, which is a city of about 10 million people. The difficulty in putting this thing together is that over the years, for every czar that came into power, they would rename a city after themselves.
Okay.
So you look back in the original 1908 map, and the cities don't correspond, so you have to go through maybe 5 or 6 different renames before that. But
Okay.
we'll go back into Russia, cross Russia, down through the Baltic states, and then into Paris.
Well, that's going to be quite a leg. How long do you think that's going to take?
It'll probably take us until mid-July, somewhere in there.
Okay,
So-
well, we're going to put some slides up pretty soon that give you a lot of the detail about how you can get connected to this race and all the important elements that you're going to need to know about to join with Luke and John. But I have to tell you, this is exciting. This is creating history. I love the fact that We have Bay Area guys recreating the history that was created a long time ago. Because actually here in Silicon Valley, we do a lot of research of all the electronics and computers that go into cars. Most of the car companies have facilities here today. So this is exciting history. Please take a look at the information about Mira Corporation. Take a look at how you contact these guys to go on the race. It's going to be a great adventure. I think you don't want to miss out on this. In fact, Sotheby's is going to support this. We're giving them some tools from Sotheby's that they can do live broadcasts where they get 3 bars while they're traveling throughout this long journey, and also some tools on a blog so that they can post information later on. So please, make sure you take all this information in. Think about joining the next great race. And thanks for spending all the time with us on Living Longer, Living Better.